edition of the show, episode 332. It's September 19th, 2022, and I'm joined once again by Kyle Klingon up in Cedar City, Iowa. Kyle, how are you?
Georgia's on my mind, though.
It should be.
Gave me a sec. Took me a second. Yeah, let's bring him on. Today's guest is Cliff Fretwell. He's down in the Peach State. Is it the Peach State? What state is it?
As long as you don't call it Hotlanta, we're good, man.
All right. Well,
Those days have sailed. Those days have sailed.
All right. Cliff Fretwell's in the house. Well, he's in his house, but he's on our show. Pumped to have him up. I don't even know how to. Long time wrestler, wrestling fan, super fan. Man, he does it all. Okay, Cliff. Man, we start the show like this a lot with everybody. Like, how we can get into today and in the last 10 years and knowing each other. But how did you get introduced to wrestling?
Junior high coach, this guy named Coach Romeo, I just grabbed me in PE one day and was like, "Hey, you're a pretty decent athlete," which I really wasn't, and was like, "You should come out for wrestling." And sixth grade, I came out. I was terrible, and I stayed about average my whole career. But it was just something about, the brotherhood and the camaraderie and just single accountability in a lot of aspects of the sport. My dad was a hardworking guy. He was a welder, and just that's all I knew, was just hard work. You don't call in sick. You show up when you say you're going to, and you do what you say you're going to commit to. And, it's just something that just kind of fit, my DNA and how I was raised. And, the more I got into it and got around the people in the sport, the more I kind of was like, this is where I want to live for the majority of my sports career. And that's kind of what I did. It's kind of been a wild ride since then.
Yeah, for sure. Very wild ride. So, I mean, growing up in Georgia in, I guess, the 90s is probably when you got into wrestling. There's not internet, there's not YouTube, there's not Flow. Like, what was your understanding of the wrestling world? Did you know much about college or international, or was your world like Georgia at the time, or maybe the region?
Yeah. So I had a teammate that had been in it for a while. I mean, but the opportunities, we try to explain to our club kids that, like, the opportunities you guys have now is like not even, you can't even describe like the least amount of opportunities we had back then, to wrestle in these national events and travel and things like that. There was Fargo, and that was it. There wasn't Super 32, there wasn't preseason nationals, there was none of these events. So like you got kind of a couple marquee events a year, but you got the USA Wrestling magazine. So you could thumb through that, and you were always watching who the Espoir kids were, like if they were ranked in the world and stuff. And that was like, my group was like Schatzman and Cody Sanderson and those guys coming through. So those guys were the guys I looked up to that were the same age as me, for the most part. So those guys are my heroes, even though they're the same age. But there was 2 Iowa Public Television VHS tapes that I had, and that was, they had the Brands brothers wrestling a couple duels on them, and literally watched those until they broke, and that was my exposure to the wrestling world from a media standpoint. You didn't really see NCAAs on TV, and if you did, it was a half a match here and there, but for the most part, it was Iowa Public Television, those 2 VHS tapes, and when Wrestling Magazine, USA Wrestling Magazine when it came in, that was it. It was wild.
Did you drop Scott Schatzman's name? Schatzman?
Yeah.
Is that who you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, Scott Schatzman. Yep, he was a savage, because I remember he was always kind of at the top of like the up and coming, or the guy that the guy that was out there like beating the best guys in the country. And I think he was in my bracket my junior year at Fargo. At 132, I believe it was 126, something weird like that. But it was just like, it was like, I'm not gonna, unless I get him first round, I ain't gonna see him. So,
Sure.
It was just cool going to White. I think him and Cody Sanderson might have wrestled in that bracket that year. I have to go back and look, but yeah, it's just crazy looking back on it and the guys that came through. But
yeah, right on. We wrestled in the same club growing up, and he was amazing, and he was like, I think he might have been 3-time All-American, but doesn't have that like standout name. But to hear you like call that from nowhere, I thought that was cool. Okay, so you're in Georgia, you grow up, and you're going to Fargo, and you said you're pretty average, but like deep love for it and accountability and hard work. So I don't know between then and like I don't know '08 or something. You meet Joe Flo out at I don't even know. So I don't know. So then when you start doing the previews with Roper, but like, did you have your club or what were you guys doing where you met Joe early on at maybe Super 32 or something? And he's like, I met these guys down in Georgia and they're great. And I was like, Georgia, they got wrestling? Like, no offense.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I remember. So everybody knows Arturo Holmes. He's the dreadlock guy at all the tournaments with the crazy like dragon skin, 3-piece suits, coaching in the corner and stuff. So like he had opened a club, I think, my junior year, and of course, like I'm blue collar family. We ain't got a lot of money to go to clubs and stuff. So I'd cut grass and like go to his place on Sundays. And that's when I started kind of getting exposed to, there's another level to this. And there was a couple guys in Georgia at the time. Like I think it was like Travis Belmere and like Chris Frazier and some of these guys that were traveling nationally and doing bigger things on the national scale. But it still was just tough to get noticed, especially being from Georgia. So, I had actually, didn't win the state title, devastated, just didn't recover mentally from it, was going to go to Georgia State and wrestle. They had a Division I program at the time. And Kurt Meyer, who was Gable's coach, like had actually started the Division I team there. And then I think Keith Walton might have took it over and Jeff Bedard and some of those guys were helping him coach. So like there was like a push to like, okay, Georgia's going to start like making some gains. And then that all kind of fell apart like about, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 years into it. And then I was just like, man, that's the writing on the wall. I was like walking on and going to a couple practices a week. Like I was never going to crack the lineup. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like they actually had some really, really tough, like Southeastern regional type kids on there. So like I'm out for like probably 3 years. And then my oldest son, Anthony, comes home with like a flyer for middle school wrestling. And I'm just like, yeah, like, okay, like you're kind of a mama's boy. Like, I don't know if this is going to be the thing for you. So like, I started investigating in the middle school coach was actually one of the better middle school coaches in Georgia. And that's saying a lot because there's not a lot of really good middle school coaches, period, that are just middle school coaches. And then I look in the high school coach is Marty Hutzel, which is like one of the best high school coaches to ever come out of Georgia. So I was like, I'll dip my toe in the water and help a little bit. And then, 3 months in, I'm crazy dad, dragging Anthony to everything, traveling around the country. And then, I started seeing the landscape that it's either USA Wrestling, Cadet Duels, and Fargo, and then there's no really other opportunity as a group. So Roper had just moved back from App State, and Josh and Mike Steven were like kind of my mentors and heroes growing up from coaching. Josh was at Collins or at Harrison at the time coaching with Roper, and his brother Mike was at Grayson. And, I was like, hey, like, how can we get these group of kids together and like drag them around the country? And like, we can't beat these guys if we don't wrestle them, so we started a nonprofit called the GNWA, Georgia National Wrestling Alliance. It was basically, a slap in the face to USA Wrestling to say, hey, like, if you guys aren't going to do it, we're going to do it. So it was just ragtag bunch of crazy dads and some diehard coaches just dragging groups of kids around the country. And, our goal every year was to take kids to NHSCAs and senior nationals and have them win some matches. And we just convinced these kids that match wins are worth scholarship money. So we would just borrow high school rooms around the metro Atlanta area. We would just charge kids exactly what it would cost to go to the event. So it's like $150. We're going to take a charter bus, put you in hotels, and we're going to do a 5-week training camp at these local high schools. Any and everybody can come. We had like probably 15 coaches that were just volunteering their time coming. I would kind of orchestrate everything with a guy named Tom Mitchell and L.A. Ruffin, Justin Ruffin's dad, who's at SIUE now. Mm-hmm. And it just started steamrolling into this, like, it started out as Bad News Bears, and then it was like the best kids in Georgia traveling, and it was just really cool to see, like, to create an avenue for these kids to like go to an event. We were all wearing the same gear. I would design the gear and just get whoever to make it, and then we just show up. But it was like, we're going to show up. We're going to look like a team. We're going to train together for 5 weeks and we're going to go. And then Team Georgia was like, well, okay, well, if you guys are going to take this group here and charge $150, then we're going to take another group to preseason nationals and charge $100. So it started to be a competitive landscape. But, at the end of the day, it was like, if we had 60 kids going to Super 32 and they had 60 kids going to preseason nationals, now we got 120 kids competing at 2 national events. And like, that's what we needed anyways.
Yeah.
So by us just trying to be this rogue establishment of crazy wrestling dads, we actually created a landscape of competition to where it just kind of forged some paths for kids to see what else was out there. So that's a really, cool thing to look back on, and all the guys that were involved and all the kids that came through, like Lujan and stuff. Like Lujan was there as a 7th grader, coming to these practices back then. And like, he was like a baby deer. Like he couldn't, he was just, and then seeing back then and now, it's crazy. Watch some of these kids. I'm extremely blessed to just be a part of it,
Yeah. That's really, I didn't really, I mean, I knew the surface of that story, but I guess I didn't know how deep it went. As you go from the Bad News Bears to like a more legit club or organization, did you was it just like, okay, like day at a time, week, month at a time? Or did you ever start to look further out and think to what today is? Like, or when did you start to think, maybe I'll start my own club or clothing apparel or et cetera?
I'll tell you, Mark, like I was thinking about, I was like, I know kind of what we're going to talk about on this show. And I was kind of thinking back through my head, because I always get the timeline wrong, and
Sure.
Stephanie will see it or hear it and just be like, dude, you're 2 years off here. You're 2 years off there. And, because she lived it with me, whether she wanted to or not. And that's one thing, man, like, how it is now, like if you don't have a ride or die wife like I have, that not only lets you do what you do, but being heavily involved in what you do, like it don't work. We know all the guys that have end up like single wrestling coaches, and like, man, she's the most ride or die wrestling wife there is on the planet. So, a lot of the stuff that I'm involved in today either happened not by accident, was a byproduct of a good, pure intention with a lot of really good people, or we saw a problem in an industry or with an event or something that we were like, we can do better. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like, as we met Joe on the road traveling with the Bad News Bears stuff, like, our kids were so bad, they'd be out of the tournament by the quarterfinals. So we just asked Joe, hey, you want us to film the quarterfinals through the rest of the tournament? Like, we ain't got nothing to do. We're already here, trips paid for. So like, that's kind of how that happened. And then, we were doing the fantasy wrestling, and I remember I had lied to my wife that Joe Flo was paying for my trip to the Vegas invite. And, I was paying for it out of my pocket. Like Joe's like, you can sleep on my floor and help film. That was the days, right?
Bring your camera.
I lied. I lied to her that Joe paid for the trip, and then me and Roper were arguing over, our fantasy wrestling, picks. And I was like, you know what? I was like, let's film them, and then there's no question as to who picked what. And he was like, okay. And then I was like, I'm going to put it on Flow. Because that was back when, we could all just upload whatever we wanted. And he was like, ain't nobody going to watch it. And I don't know if it's still up, but it was the Long and Dirty Vegas preview invite. And it was like 2 hours long. It was absurd. It was me and Roper sitting in my backyard, like arguing over who's going to win what. And I think that's when Frank Molinaro, Gorilla Hulk name came up, and like all that stuff. And then like people watched it, and like people were talking about it. And I told Roper, I was like, we got to do another one for the next event. And then it went from same thing, just me and him being morons in front of a camera, to like us breaking down and just spending absurd amounts of time doing the previews. And like, we didn't realize like we were kind of creating our own personal, it was kind of like a podcast back then where there weren't podcasts. Yeah. It was just me and him at 2 a.m. reading off spreadsheets, arguing about who was going to beat who. But I think the cool part about that is like, we were so passionate about what we were actually discussing, because I never wanted to be wrong, and I always was wrong about a lot of stuff, and Roper was just so much smarter than me, that we did our research. And like even college coaches appreciated that we weren't just saying this guy was going to beat this guy just because he had this number next to his name. We were actually talking about like styles and and positions and strengths versus weaknesses. And like, I think that made a difference, because it was just kind of a fresh thing, and it was just two guys that just bled passion for the sport. And accidentally people kind of looked at us as like pseudo experts in some of this stuff. And then like, it became a job. Like, and we felt the pressure to like always be on point and right, but it took its toll. I mean, like two guys that like spent 5-6 hours a day digging through spreadsheets and brackets, like it started to suck a little bit of life out of us. And, Roper was probably the first one to be like, look, man, like nothing should ever be this like stressful that started out being this fun, and those are the things that I miss the most. It's just me and him just, arguing about wrestling and who's going to win what. But like that just kind of put us on a different stage, at that national level, so when the club started, it was just kind of the next progression,
Yeah. So then that's where I was going to go. Like, why or how or did you know Roper? You knew him prior to the club, right? And you guys started the club, or no?
Yeah. I didn't know him until he moved back from App State. I met him through Josh Stevens. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was coaching. So that was back when Josh Condon and the Medveds were at Harrison, and Josh took a handful of his kids up to Ironman, and then he got in a bunch of trouble because they wrestled Blair kids, and like Georgia fined him and all this stuff. And like I think Condon made the finals, and Alex Medved got 5th or something. It was crazy for Georgia kids to go to Ironman back then and do anything.
Sure. So
like I met Roper through that. But the minute I met Roper, I was like, this is my dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? You just meet people and you're like, that's my guy. Like we see eye to eye on a crazy level that a lot of people don't. Well, the club thing wasn't ever a thought really when we did the GNWA. It was like, hey, we're going to start this nonprofit and then we're going to parlay it into a profitable business.
Yeah.
But the writing started to be on the wall that like we made an amazing combination of wrestling people. I knew Roper was and to this day still one of the most exceptional coaches and technicians I've ever been around. And like I knew I could do a little bit of marketing and was starting to learn business a little bit. And I was just like, man, let's do this in the private sector. Like we've got these kids that we've been like a Lujan type kid that's been with us traveling for 3-4 years. Like we're not going to catch these guys just by going and wrestling them on the weekends. So like we need to train more. Like how can we do this? And it can't just be a couple weeks before these tournaments with all these kids. So like I was working at an ad agency and my buddy actually laid me off, and he was like, man, I don't feel too bad laying you off because we lost a big like Verizon account. It was like $100 million. And I was an art director and I knew I was going to get clipped, because they started from the top down. And he was like, I don't feel bad laying you off because I know you got all these side hustles. And I was like, well, one's a nonprofit and one's just kind of this little thing. So it's like, I didn't tell Stephanie for a couple of days. I told Roper, I was like, I'm going to drive around and find a building. I said, we're just going to start a wrestling facility, and I had no clue, like, you're not going to make any money off a wrestling facility. So me and L.A. Ruffin got in a car one weekend, drove around, found a metal building in Stockbridge about 15 minutes from where we're at now. And I signed a 2-year lease and then told Stephanie, hey, I got laid off. And then, by the way, we're starting a wrestling facility. And by the way, I signed a 2-year lease and please don't leave me. So like, when I say ride or die, man, like, she is the most ride or die person on the planet. I've given her multiple reasons to leave me in the dust. And like, I guess the thing we underestimate is all those kids that have been traveling with us. I mean, because Lujan lived an hour and 20 minutes away from us, like one way, but what we underestimated is we had created a bond and trust with those kids and those parents traveling those years that when we opened the facility, they all showed up. The Pikes, Jake Hodges, like, all those guys, like they showed up day one. And, I know some people see a lot of pictures of the kids on the wall in the club and the technique videos and stuff. Like those are the OG kids that like the day we opened, they showed up. Ryan Mosley, Hunter Gamble, like I'm missing a ton of them, but like those are the kids, Owen Brown, he's at SDSU right now. Like those kids showed up and it didn't matter how far they were away. It wasn't like they were 15 minutes away. And like, it was just cool, man. It was just one of those things that the purest intentions sometimes, yield the coolest results, or the coolest experiences in life. And, it's been an unbelievable blessing. It has. It's been really cool.
It had to be scary as hell. Like a 2-year lease is a commitment. Like, okay, 1 year is enough, but like 2, like, so obviously deep down you had faith or you believed that this could work. When they all showed up on day one, was that a little surprising, or was it like, I'm sure it was refreshing, but was it surprising? Holy crap! This is not gonna take as long as I thought.
It kind of blew us away. you've been around Roper a ton, man. Like, he's just one of those matter-of-fact guys. It's like, it's either going to work or it's not. He's a black and white guy. I'm way more emotional about stuff, and that's why it was a perfect fit. And like, I was bouncing off the walls. I was just like, dude, he showed up and these guys are here. And Roper's just like, yep, now we got to get him good. You know, it was immediately to work. You know, it was just, and, you know, not a lot of people have ever going to get to see the side of Roper that I have over the years, but like, that dude's got unbelievable amount of love in his heart, you know, for the career that he's in, but just the type of person he is and how he was raised. But, you know, I could tell he was doing backflips on the inside, but he would never probably admit it or show it. But, I mean, we got right to work, man. And we just convinced those kids that, you know, we were going to outwork everybody. And, you know, the coolest part about that journey is we didn't know how to coach and they didn't know how to wrestle. So, like, we learned how to coach while they learned how to wrestle. And I'll never be able to get to experience that with another group of kids again. You know what I'm saying? Like, It's kind of like raising your first child. You don't know how to parent, and they don't really know how to be a human in this world. And you know, and that's why the second kid, you just let do whatever they want, because you're you know, you're kind of numb to it. But you know, that was the experience we had, you know, and those relationships I have with those kids now is just the relationships I have with the kids today are great, but you'll never be able to replace that experience that we had with that first group. And it's just it's too special to even put into words. But you know, it's, you know, that's why I put them on the wall when we remodeled this new gym, because like, it was that important to recognize those kids that showed up day one and stayed there to the end of their careers.
Sure.
You know,
and it's got to be crazy to not only see them show up on day one, but to see them turn into young men and like, at this point, probably adults, right? You're like, whoa, you're a grown up.
Yeah, I mean, and not just grown-ups and adults, but successful businessmen, successful coaches. I mean, Hunter Gamble's coaching at UTC. Ryan Mosley, you know, he's a two-time qualifier for Gardner Webb. He's running a vintage clothing and sneaker shop, and when I say he's absolutely killing it, he's absolutely killing it. But you know, for guys like Ryan to call me and ask me business advice, and then not only me able to be coach him in a wrestling sense, but give him some business advice and then watch him run with that, you know, that trust level. You know, I got some amazing mentors in my life, and I'm sure we'll get to change them at one point about Elite Eight. But, you know, being able to mentor Ryan on a wrestling level, and then be able to have that same trust when he asked me about his livelihood, and then watch him attack it the same way he did wrestling technique in the business world. You know, there's never been a time where he called and asked me for advice and the next morning he wasn't executing, you know, and to watch him do stuff like that, you know, it's just, it's so cool for me to just be a part of, you know. Like, sometimes I'm just like, dude, I don't deserve to like be an integral part of some of these people's lives, because my word carries a lot, you know, to what I say to him. I don't want to give the wrong advice and it, you know, ruin his business, but that trust level's there, you know, and it's just cool to do that. I mean, Brett Yarborough, he's still up at Indiana Tech. I mean, there's so many kids I could go down that wall and name, like J.R. Wirt. You know, he had moved down here from PA and then went back to Christian, you know, wrestling at Christian's Brothers. You know, like, there's just so many cool kids that came through this. I mean, Monty Jones, you know, there's still kids that like came through, that some of the best kids that came through this club that are still, you know, active in college, like Singleton and stuff like that. You know, you're talking about Kay McCrary, Kyle Gallhofer, like those guys, you know, Jackson Smith, like those were OG compound kids. They're still out there like doing it on a huge level. It's just too freaking cool for me to watch.
Sure. So there's the GNWA, and then that morphs into Compound Wrestling Club, and then and you guys are doing the previews in between, and behind you on the wall I see that badass mural, and I'm guessing you put that together, and you got some really, you're talented with design, and you'd make these I don't want to call them black market shirts, but, you know, like Gorilla Hulk and, oh, God.
Sure.
Kent State. What was his name?
Kilgore.
The Killer, right?
The Vermonster. The Vermonster, like, yeah.
So how did that, I'm guessing it was that morphed into, you know, there's Compound Wrestling Club and there's Compound Sportswear, right? You have an apparel company. How did that come to be? And I believe the club was first, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so the clothing, again, was one of those things. It's like, we're trying to buy gear from our club, And I think the first order we did was with Fernando Serratos when he was at Clinch Gear. We're there in Creasy, and that was back when Dan Henderson and all those guys were at Clinch Gear. And like, you know, I love Fernando to death, man. He's a close family friend to this day, but like, there was just a lot of inherent issues. Like they were running into supply issues. Like Clinch Gear blew up so quick. You know, they're like, we were ordering stuff, and then, you know, and it wasn't that we had a bad experience with Clinch Gear, but again, it was one of those things that's like, man, can I do this better? Like, can I do this better? So like with GNWA, this is ironic, and I really don't want to give them any love, but I will, because I'm just being transparent. But like, I was designing our GNWA gear, and then I was getting Randy Cowett to take down Sportswear to make it. You know, and then we were going to other events, and people were like, man, y'all stuff looks really good. Like, who made it? And I'm like, well, I designed it, but like, you know, these guys made it. So I just started funneling everything to Takedown. And then I'm thinking, like, these guys are paying me like $150 to design all their gear. And then I'm sending Takedown Sportswear like thousands of dollars of teamwear, like all the time. And I was like, I got to figure out how to do this. So like, that was probably the most painful failures I've been through in my life, is when we decided to start doing teamwear on the side. But it was springboard by the Save Olympic Wrestling t-shirt. So like when wrestling got taken out of the Olympics, I remember driving in. We had just moved into the building we're in now. It's a 14,000 square foot building, and all we were doing was wrestling. And again, that was another stupid idea that I had, to make this giant sports training MMA facility that didn't work out. But you know, I was constantly trying to figure out what was next, and just over leverage everybody around me, whether they wanted to or not. And I drove in, I sat down at my desk. I'm the only one in this building. You know, Roper come in for practice and, you know, and stuff, but I was in here like trying to do some teamwear stuff. I was laid off at that point, just doing contract work. And I heard it on the radio, and I went to Facebook and started Save Olympic Wrestling Facebook page. Yeah. You know, and then like, a place for everybody to put the information. And then by like lunchtime, it had like 36,000 followers. And then by that night, it had like 75,000 followers. And like all these news outlets were posting on it. And everybody thought it was some official thing. And I just created it that morning. And I'm like, dude, I got an audience. I need to do something with it. And, you know, everybody was donating money and stuff. And I was like, all right, with my skill set, what can I do to help this cause? So like, and then somebody had commented, you got to make a shirt. You know, that was the thing back then, because I had already been doing the Gorilla Hulk shirts. And that, you mentioned that, not to get off on a tangent, but I did that to raise money for the Adam Fry Foundation. You know, so, you know, we had got to know, you know, those guys that were doing that. And I just did that every year until John Smith called me when I made the JO shirt and was like, hey, Cliff, man, you got to take that shirt down. Like, this is a problem. You know, that was pre-NIL. So
wait,
like,
I didn't know this story. Give me the.
Oh, yeah. So I made the Kid Dynamite shirt, the Vermonster shirt, the Gorilla Hulk shirt, the Kilgore shirt. And then I was going to make one for Stieber, but I got shot down on that because I actually asked for permission. Well, me and Jo were DMing on Twitter, I think. I don't even know if Instagram was around then. And he was like, yeah, make me a shirt. And you know, if you know Jo, is just like, sure, make me a shirt. He really didn't bother him. So I make the shirt, and then everybody starts sharing it on social media, and I'm taking orders. But, you know, you didn't have Shopify and all that back then. I'm just taking orders through text messages and managing a spreadsheet and just hustling. And I wasn't keeping any of the money. And I remember meeting Frank Molinaro's dad in a hotel room with a box of shirts and thinking this guy's in a mob and all this stuff, you know, like I'm thinking all this crazy stuff, you know, like, but like I get a text message from John Smith, which of course I saved his number on my phone. And he's like, hey, this is Coach Smith. I need you to give me a call. And I was like, uh-oh. So like I call and he doesn't answer. And I call again later that afternoon, and I'm talking about the principal's office, feeling like it was next level. You know, I was terrified. And he was just as smooth as he could be. And he's like, I got Jo sitting here at my desk. He was like, talking about this T-shirt. He said, can't do it. He's like, got to take it down. He's like, we can't be having any of this trouble leading up to the NCAA tournament. Because I was doing them the week NCAAs, and I was just delivering them to people in the stands. And I get off the phone, and I'm just like, I just pissed off John Smith. Out of all the things I've never wanted to do in my life, pissing off John Smith was one of them. But like, I mean, I guess me and him are cool now. We've had some conversations since then. But yeah, that was when I was like, this is scary, but I'm making some noise. You know what I'm saying? It's the wrong kind of noise, but if I'm raising some eyebrows at some of these guys, like, I'm doing something right. But again, it was pure intentions. We donated every single dime to the Adam Fry Foundation. I don't know how much it was over time, but like, again, it was just something pure we were doing. So then, fast forward to Save Olympic Wrestling t-shirts, I was just doing that to raise money. And I convinced my wife to sell our house and move into an apartment to downsize so we could save money. Anthony was wrestling at Indiana, our oldest son, and Cameron was young. He wasn't wrestling. And I remember just all these orders just coming in from all over the world. And at that point, we had a Shopify site set up, but the shipping label creation wasn't what it is today. So I'm hand typing in shipping labels. And I think we ended up selling probably 10,000 shirts around the world, over the course of, how many ever months. And I'm just hand shipping them in boxes, like I'm sure there's some photos online from back when there was just boxes piled up everywhere. And Stephanie she was running a law firm at the time, and she'd come home and help me stuff boxes, and we just get them out the door. But like at the end of the day, it was like she'd look at me and be like, we're doing all this and you're not making any money. You realize you keep giving it away to everybody. So, that's when I was kind of like, okay, we got a brand now. People know about Compound, and like, can we really make this clothing thing work? And this is one of the cool parts about the sport and business that you don't get to hear a lot. I called up Jason Heslop, who is that one of the owners of Blue Chip. I said, hey, Jason, you don't know me very well. We've met at Super 32 a couple of times. I said, thinking about starting a clothing company. Can you give me any advice? And that guy spent an hour and 27. I got the screenshot on my phone because I'll never forget it. Like it's probably about an hour and 20 minutes he spent on the phone with me and just walked me through like all the pitfalls and challenges I would face if I started a clothing company, and like, to this day, like every year I see him at Super 32, I give him a big hug and just give him an update on what we're doing. And I'm trying to steal his business. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Now, we're neck and neck, but like at the end of the day, that was one of the most pure, acts of kindness that I've gotten from somebody who was a direct competitor of mine today. And we just started chipping away at it. We started at factories that we had no business. I mean, I'd never printed a t-shirt before in my life. I'd never manufactured any textile before in my life. And part of that's, just reckless, but part of it's cool because we had no preconceived notion of how to do stuff. So we learned our own way, and I guess it's 10 years. I don't know. Stephanie keeps up with all that, but like, it's just been really cool to get to where we were then, learning all these hard, and I think a lot of people see us today and, they recognize us as a big brand, but like, I probably almost put us out of business 3 or 4 times, from Jump Street, just whether it's making bad decisions or trying stuff we shouldn't, but I think that's part of why we're where we're at today, is because I was kind of fearless in making those decisions. And then Stephanie would take away some of the recklessness and add some, some structure to it, and I think we got like 37, 38 employees today. It's crazy, but like, she runs the ship, man. Like I get a lot of credit because I'm kind of the guy out there in the trenches at a lot of these events, but like, she runs this ship. And if it wasn't for her, like it would not run. I would run it straight into the ground. Like, I'm the creative dreamer, thinker, and doer, and that's it, man. That's where my skill set stops. So,
sure. It's funny. I don't. Maybe I told you this, maybe not. 2013 was the Save Olympic Wrestling year. The year they got dropped, and it was gonna. 2020 was gonna be the last year. Maybe 16 was gonna be the last year. I went out to the Worlds in Budapest in 2013, and in the concourse hallway, there's your shirt on a rack for sale. And I'm like, just ripped. Ripped bootleg. And I was like, these dudes just stole, or was it? I think it was Budapest. It might even been Russian Nationals.
You sent me a picture.
It was an international tournament, and maybe I saw it at Russian Nationals. I just remember seeing it like at the biggest events overseas at the senior level, and being like, "Dang, Cliff stuff caught on." It sucks that they're ripping it and selling it bootleg, but like, this guy's making an impact. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, another funny little aspect of that is like we made a Cyrillic version and we made a Russian version too. And the Cyrillic version, the Iranian people were buying, and PayPal froze all my money for terroristic activity at one
Really?
point. So I got, yeah, like I just got like, I'll tell you, man, if you hadn't started a small business and grown it into anything beyond that, like you really don't understand how wild the world is out there. You know, you just the little things you take for granted, you know, just showing up and working for a company and not having to deal with that higher level stuff. It's just crazy when like you have to deal with it. Like just the things that you run into. It's just like, seriously, like, but you know, like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way, man. Like it's really molded us as a company. I mean, it's definitely changed us as a married couple. You know, we're going on 25 years this year, but like, you know, we figured out how to navigate it, you know, and I wouldn't have never been able to do this, you know, just with my hopes and dreams and work ethic. I just wouldn't have happened that way. So like, but you know, I have amazing mentors in my life, and Shane Chittum's one of them. He's one of the smartest businessmen I know. And he's a great family friend. And, you know, that's, you know, kind of, you know, where a lot of this other stuff started materializing. Because like the same thing with Roper, like if you don't have a partner in crime that is going to back you unconditionally, which Roper always has to this very day, like it's tough to just go do a lot of this stuff on your own. Like I truly believe there's nobody in this world that's self-made. You know, there's always somebody along the way that helps you. And, you know, I've just been unbelievably blessed to have the Ropers and the John Nicolelas and the LA Ruffins and, you know, and the Shane Chittums in my life that held me accountable and kept me on track and was like, yeah, that's a great idea, but, you know, what about this? You know, and it's just been cool, man. And then here we go again with some more craziness with Elite Eight. Just might not have more we can chew at a lot of this stuff. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Well, that's great, because I'm glad you brought up Shane, because that's a perfect segue, and you mentioned it. Elite Eight Duels, this is, I believe, the second year, right?
Yeah, well, I think it might be the third year, but we had to cancel one event, so this is the third event, I believe. Third event, because we had to cancel the one at the Columbus Iron Works.
Sure. But give me well, how to come together, right? Because you're talking about, you know, the GNWA and all these how the spark, and then like how you fanned the flames and blew it into something bigger. How did this? Where was the initial ember for this, and where's it at today?
I lost a bet. So during COVID, and one little tidbit I'll tie into this that'll help kind of bring some, you know, clarity to everything. So, you know, the Boom Ranch is literally a giant ranch that Shane built up at outside of Cleveland, Tennessee, I think it is. And, you know, he owns HCB Yachts, which is a yacht manufacturing company. And like I said, extremely successful businessman. You wouldn't know it talking to him. He's one of the most humble, like just country boys you ever met. But like, again, like I said, he's an extremely smart businessman. So like, he's kind of built this training, you know, complex on his land up in Tennessee. And, you know, obviously that's where, you know, Ace and Cody and Cooper Hilton and some of these really, really good kids coming out of Tennessee are training. And so I'm up there during COVID. There's nowhere to really train. I don't know if our gym was completely shut down at that point or not, but like I had gone up there and just running some sessions and hanging out with the family or whatever, killing some time during COVID. And, you know, we're sitting around one evening and just reminiscing about kids and talking about this, that, and the other. And I was like, you know what, man, like, you know, we got Singleton and Henson and McCrary and all these kids that have been traveling for, you know, dang near a decade together that are about to leave to go off to college. I was like, and so when we started, GMWA was just high school guys. And then I mentioned LA Ruffin a couple of times, like Justin Ruffin at the time was a young kid, you know, and LA was like, and I also got to mention Mike Gianfalo, like he was one of the true OGs, you know, with me and Roper and Tom Mitchell. And so LA was like, well, if you're doing this with the high school kids, why can't we do this with the youth kids? And I'm like, you can, but I can't do that part too. Like I was just barking orders nonstop at all of these guys about GNWA stuff. I'm sure like they got so tired of it. But so they started Team Minion, which was the young kids traveling around the country. And, you know, if you're a high school wrestler today or, you know, towards the end of your high school career, there's more than likely you've ran into Team Minion at a tournament, whether it's VAC or McDonough Duels or some of that stuff. So, like those kids grew up together, traveling the country, making a name for Georgia. They're the reason why we put 5 kids in Super 32 finals a couple years ago. Like that is that group, and it's not just them traveling. They got clubs in Georgia that they've been training at. They're not all my guys. I'm not trying to take credit for all those guys, but those guys grew up together wrestling at the highest level. So I was like, Shane, it'd be really cool to get these guys back together as high schoolers now that have been traveling as youth guys and put them against like some of the best teams in the country. And, Shane's kind of like me, just doesn't really see any barriers to entry to anything. He was like, well, I can get this team to come, and I can get this team to come, and I can get this team to come. And I was like, you're not getting all these teams under one roof for one weekend with all these studs to wrestle each other. Like the world just don't work that way. Everybody's, ranking, protecting, and, just the logistics of it alone is just too much to even ask anybody. And I was like, look, I'll make a deal with you. And I maybe had had one beer. That's all I'm going to put on record. But I was like, I'll make a deal with you. I said, if you can get all these teams to commit, I'll give you 2 weeks. I said, I'll do the rest of the work. I'll put the event together. I'll find a place to do it, and we'll plan it together. Well, that SOB in about a week and a half started sending me screenshots, text messages from Dynasty and, Team California and Forbes out in Oklahoma and all these guys. And it's like, holy smokes, like I might actually have to plan this event. Like I got to find a venue. So it's like, well, we can't just do it in some boring high school gym. They were all closed anyways. All schools were closed. I was like, we got to do this high end. And again, the goal was never to be some smash and grab tournament that just makes a ton of money. Like that wasn't the goal for me and Shane. We're unbelievably blessed to where we're at in our lives, in the business world. So it's like, we want to do this right. We want to do it top shelf because these kids deserve this. You know what I'm saying? Like these kids have very few events like Who's Number One that they show up and they feel special. So how can we basically make the Who's Number One a Duels? So I find the most expensive freaking hotel I could possibly find in Atlanta, being the idiot that I am, at the Marriott Marquis, and like we just pulled the event off, and like I'm literally just walking around, and of course, like the minute I plan any event, I call Travis Gerard. Like, he runs the Scuffle and he does a ton of stuff with the NCAA tournament, and like he's my guy. Like we've been doing tournaments together. I would never run another tournament without that man. And I called him and I said, Travis, I got another wild idea. I just need you on board with it. Just make sure you ain't got a softball game that weekend with your daughter. Like, show up here. And Travis is the most low key like guy, and he trusts me and I trust him. So like these teams start rolling in that Friday, and it just becomes the most unbelievable weekend, and then it was like, we're going to put our best against your best, and we're going to put the Southeast boys against everybody else on the planet, and who would have thought that Team Minion, like literally storybook ending to the duel against Kong, that they shouldn't have won on paper. And it just kind of set the tone for where we're at. But like, I will say this, anybody that runs events knows, I mean, and you've been involved with Who's Number One, like it is tough to put the best kids together at one time, like just the commitments and, everything. So like this event is not the biggest event we do, but it is by far the most stressful event we do, just because like it's such a high level, demand, and everything's got to be perfect, I mean, because certain events, like I said, Who's Number One have set the bar, and that's just what we want to do. We just want to have the most elite event, in this format. And again, college coaches can come and they ain't got to run around to 30 different mats. I mean, Super 32 is what it is, and it'll be, etched in stone as one of the best tournaments ever in the history of high school wrestling, and now all ages. But like, man, 4 or 5 mats, that's easy for a coach to come and watch, and see the kids and know who's coming up. So like, it's just again, it's one of those things that's cool to be a part of. It's cool to be a part of with a guy like Shane, who, he's got my back no matter what. We actually had our first fight this week. It was kind of funny.
Oh, that's
I just
cute.
texted him. I was like, it was crazy because I mean, me and him just get along so well, and we had our first kind of fight this week, and I just texted him. I was like, I don't want to talk. So like several times this week, he's just texted me out of a joke, like, I don't want to talk. But nah, it's a great relationship with me and him and the people we have on board. Like I said, man, but probably my biggest challenge as an entrepreneur, as a dreamer, like a doer of like big things that are just scary to do, is like just learning how to delegate, like letting people that are good at their jobs do their jobs and let me, just stay in my lane. So like I'm getting better at that. We brought some guys on like Jeremiah Walker and stuff who's like just the backbone of what we do and do it for the right reasons. So like we're figuring out how to, and I don't want to run a ton of tournaments. I don't like, that's not my love to run big event, but this one's pretty special and we put our heart and soul into it. And, I hope the kids truly appreciate it for what it is and what we do. Cause hopefully it'll be a profitable thing at some point. It has not been up to this point, but it's like I said, it's fine. We have a blast doing it.
Sure. So it's this weekend, right? Give me like what you're looking forward to with the most exciting thing. I think Bray told me it's like 23 or 29% of all ranked high school wrestlers are in this event. It's like it's out of this world.
Yeah, I think that's dropped a little bit. I think we've had a couple injuries. I mean, but it's still off the charts percentage wise. I mean, he sent me some of the new numbers this morning, and it's crazy. I think it's 26% instead of like 30% now. But I mean, that's still pretty absurd when you got 12 teams. And that's another thing we learned too. When you invite 8 and one doesn't show up, like that's crippling. So like we're doing 12 teams. I think we'll eventually settle into 10 teams, and then it's always going to be an 8-man bracket on Sunday. So I want to stay Elite 8. I don't want to just keep growing it. I mean, it's just like Super 32 used to really be a 32-man bracket, look at it now. So, I mean, to me, like Shane follows that high school scene a lot more than I do, obviously because of Cody and that type of stuff. And he knows these guys inside and out. But to me, man, I like watching these elite kids light up when they walk in a venue. And, I was walking around last year just asking kids, and I went up to Jess Roga and I was like, what do you think? And he was like, this is one of the coolest events I've been to. And that's all I need. You know what I'm saying? I for a kid like that's wrestled everywhere, at the highest level, and for him to, think that it's cool to be at an event, not just, I'm just here working, doing my normal thing. Like that's what I care about, and, hopefully we just get more and more refined and better with it. And, and we just keep creating cool experiences for these kids. So like, to me, I'm looking forward to the whistle blowing and, all the technology being hooked up and working right. I mean, that's the biggest thing I stress about. Bill Galko's been amazing up to this point, helping me with a lot of that stuff. But, getting together with you guys, I mean, it just made sense, from a coverage aspect. So, I'm excited about that and creating a good working relationship to just, again, give these kids more and more and more exposure, and give them these opportunities that they work a lifetime for and making them feel special, but the cool thing is like, when some of these big names drop, that they're picking up Southeastern kids that, cause travel is a little too tight this time of week. And you'll get some of these kids that, it's like I told our club kids earlier this week, I said, stay ready. You guys aren't top, 25 kids in the country, but if somebody needs to fill a hole, your weight needs to be sharp and you need to be ready to go. I mean, we're training for Super 32. So like, that's the stories that are cool, right? A kid that wasn't on the card, that gets picked up by a team and then he knocks off a big name guy. Like that's the stuff that's cool about our sport. If you're ready and you get an opportunity to shine, then, we'll give it to them. So, I mean, that's the cool part. I'm looking for the cool storylines this weekend, and I know Bray and Mike are coming in and that they're going to do a lot better job than I've done in the past of covering it. And, that's the cool part for me is the stories, man. Like, I just like looking back and being like, what, this kid, showed up and he was underdog and like he clipped a couple kids and, he made a name for himself, and there's going to be a ton of college coaches there. And that's the cool part of the sport, man.
Yeah. No, I'm super stoked. You got a great couple guys out there with Mike and David coming out. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to watching it from home and kind of following some of those storylines that you were talking about. We are moving towards the end of the show. I know Kyle Klingman's been really patient over here, taking notes and keeping everything in order. But he's gonna come on and maybe stump you here. He's gonna throw some curveballs your way, Cliff.
Probably.
What? I don't know. You might know all these. It's our game, Sweat It Out. 5 questions hoping to make you sweat. Are you ready to play, Cliff? Huh?
Sure.
All right. Number 1. Name a character in the show SpongeBob SquarePants other than SpongeBob SquarePants.
Squidward.
Man, see, you're already killing it.
I wouldn't have got that.
Nice work. Number 2, who is the bar know-it-all in the hit show Cheers?
Cliff Clavin. That was easy.
I would have got that.
Oh.
Everybody knows Cliff Clavin.
You got it. All right. Number 3, what is the name of the American children's book series about the adventures of Emily Elizabeth and her giant red furred dog?
Clifford the Big Red Dog. I see the trend here. Jennifer
You
Cat
got it.
sent me a picture of Clifford the Big Red Dog the other day, just randomly.
Who did?
Start doing that.
Man. Jennifer
Jen-
Cat. She just sent me a random picture of Clifford the Big Red Dog the other day.
Number 4, in chemistry, what is it called when a substance is made up of 2 or more different chemical elements combined in a fixed ratio?
Compound.
Yep.
I see what he's doing here.
got it.
Doing here. See, he's getting degrees, baby.
And number 5, what wrestler from Georgia won 8 Fargo titles and a junior world championship?
I was sitting in the stands wearing a paper Burger King hat. That is Sean Haig. I'm doing almost.
Oh, you almost
said
missed
Sean
it.
Russell.
Oh, man. Yep.
Sean Haig, a man amongst
got it.
boys.
Dang.
Yep.
5 for 5.
5 for 5,
Dang.
starting it out.
When's the last time we had a 5 for
Greatness.
5?
It's been a while.
I'm surrounded by greatness behind me. Surrounded by greatness.
Seriously. Okay.
Training for this my whole life.
I was I have to be finished, but we gotta talk about Worlds. We don't need to dive deep because we don't have all that much time. But I know you were up. I know you. If you weren't, I know you went back and watched. Man, what'd you think about the team this year? Any of the teams, the performances? Pretty lights out.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate Russia wasn't there, but I'll tell you this, man. Like, I tweeted yesterday after Snyder got done, man. Like, what an amazing time to be an American wrestling fan. Because even though, I mean, you got guys like Rivera that, you know, they're not representing the USA, but like to just watch those kids pass. You know what I'm saying? We're fans of them as college wrestlers. You got Fine Silver and all these other guys that are going out doing their thing, and like they're creating opportunities to be the best guys in the world. I mean, I know some people think that's not right, but I mean, sit at home or go compete. You know, I mean, we know where they trained at, where they came from, and what they're about. You know, at the end of the day, man, seeing those guys, you know, gel like that, you know, I mean, it was always tough for us, you know, with the Burroughs Day Taylor thing when they were all clumped together, is like, you got to pick one of those guys. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, whether you admit it or not, but like now to see those guys spread out, like, it's too freaking cool, man. Like and watching them as long as you have, you know, and being so closely connected to them, like you feel the same. It's like, what a time to be an American wrestling fan, you know. And like, I'll tell you, man, Iran's got some young scrappers, dude. Like, you know, with Yanni ends a drought, and that was amazing. And I know he's not happy with Silver, but like that kid was freaking good, man. Really? You know, and they're rebuilding and coming back. I was a little disappointed, you know, in some of the, you know, the other teams like Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. They'll bring more than just, you know, a couple tough guys. You know, I think those countries are down for whatever reason. You know, I was a little shocked that, you know, that Bajrang, he looked a little flat. Like, he's one of my faves, you know, to watch. Like, I mean, of course he got it done in the end, but like he didn't look like his normal self. But I mean, dude, it was great. It was great. I mean, all the people that are saying Worlds is down, whatever, you know, Russia wasn't there. Like, all right, it was still some amazing wrestling, man. I gladly trade the sleep deprivation, you know, to watch all that. You know, and I appreciate the covers that, you know, Bray and those guys did, man. It was cool kind of being in the saddle with those guys. I remember back in the day when it was just Jason Bryant on like an audio stream, and like you're just listening and you're just texting your buddies. There really wasn't anywhere to have like a community conversation. So like, how far have we come to just be able to watch it with the wrestling community? Is pretty doggone cool too. So and just levels to everything.
You brought this up at the beginning of this when we were talking about Worlds, like Dave Taylor, Burroughs, but they were all clumped together in one weight. This is for either of you. Going as far back as, like, was there ever a time when you had, I mean, these are three of the, and Jordan's the greatest, or very, very easily arguable. Dake and Taylor aren't far off. They're top 10, top 20, top 15 probably, at least, maybe, you know, with time on the clock yet. Has that ever happened? Where there was, I know there was like Schultz and Monday, and you had these two-man rivalries. Was there ever 3 guys stacked in a weight that finally separated and was like, holy cow? These two, what,
I think
Taylor's got
yeah.
3.
Klingman would know more than I do. He's the historian, but like, I mean, I know, Cross and Brands, some of those battles come to mind where guys that won Olympic and world medals that were around the same weight, but like, I don't know about 3 deep. I mean, that's kind of insane. I agree with you. And to be able to spread out and still win, not just spread out. Like, I mean, Brands and Cross and those guys, like, they went up and down a little bit, but not as much as they did. I mean, look at Taylor, I mean, Taylor had the frame for it, and I don't want to say I was surprised, and I don't know how the world team selection works with, you having to pick your spot, but I didn't know if, Dake would look at 79 and, maybe think that was an easier path and less weight cut, and force Jordan down. But I don't know how that dynamic works from a rule standpoint, or that's what he wanted to do anyways. That was kind of crazy. He's going to Indy Line Wrestling Club, but like, I guess the rich get richer, huh?
Well, that is crazy because, Nolf's there at 74, and he's nipping on the heels of Dake. Shoot, they wrestled, what was it, 2-1? Or they wrestled a really close match not too long ago. So
smoked him smoked him bad that first couple times, and then like it got a little bit closer. You're right. You're right. And that's the thing, man. Like, friends close, enemies closer.
We'll see, man. And in 2 more years, obviously Kyle's going to progress, but you give Nolf a couple more years to progress. Should be interesting. And I bet Klingman's over here going through his Rolodex of wrestling encyclopedia, trying to figure out if there's ever a 3-man group this successful that spread out and kept winning. But Kyle, you got anything?
The reason it is the number one that got spread out, and part of that was because in 1996 they stopped at the 10 weight classes, so it kind of got forced into being clumped together there for a little bit, and then once you expanded out to the 10 weight classes in 2018, you started seeing the ability to separate a little bit. So it got forced into that, and it'll get forced again with the Olympics. But there's never been a grouping like this in U.S. history for sure.
14 titles between these 3 guys with however much longer they keep going. So yeah, one of the best times to be an American wrestling fan. Sweet. Well, Cliff, we're kind of down to the end of the hour, but I do want to give you the final word to say anything about Georgia, Compound, your ride or die wife, Stephanie, any and or everything. But the floor is yours.
Yeah, man. Like I'm not going to use this to be a sales pitch, man. We got our club and Compound Wrestling. We got our clothing company, Compound Sportswear, and like I said, my wife's been unbelievable. But like I think a lot of people ask me a lot of times what my motives are. Like, and I'm the least likely to quote a country music song, but Luke Combs says it best. Like, would you still, what would you do if you weren't doing this? I'd still be doing this. It wouldn't matter if it was money or not. Like, it's who I am and a huge part of my life. And I'm blessed to be a part of every aspect of it, good and bad. It's definitely shaped me into the person I am.
Awesome. Well, man, you, and actually one more question. You go back to this guy, even pre-GNWA, right? This guy who's devastated and he never won a state title. And if I said, hey, in 2022, this is who Cliff Fretwell is going to be, right? A big member of the wrestling community. He's got a clothing company. He's got an apparel company. Those are the same thing. He's got a club. He's doing this big wrestling event. Would you believe me?
Nah, I'd probably drawing pictures at like an amusement park or something, drawing the character pictures at an amusement park or something. Nah, I didn't, man. I think that's the cool part of life's journey is like, if you're constantly trying to evaluate what your strengths and weaknesses are and progress each day, like, and got the people around you that try to squeeze it out of you, then, it's an adventure, and that's kind of what's happened. I've learned what I'm good at, and some people have helped me recognize that. And like I said, man, it's just on to the next, man. It's on to the next scary thing, the next cool, scary thing in my life. And, no, not even close, not even remotely close.
Awesome. Well, and I'm sure there's lots more to come, and probably more things that we'd, in 10 years we'll look back. Oh, I didn't expect that. Didn't expect that. So,
I'll try to keep the trend alive.
Yeah, well, please do, Cliff. You've had a big impact on the wrestling community. And I know you'll continue to. And Elite 8 Duels, everybody, it's this weekend. You can watch it here on Flow. Follow along. I'm sure tons of social media, different accounts and whatnot. But we appreciate everything you've done, Cliff. Thanks for joining us today. And, man, I can't wait to run into you again.
Appreciate it, Bader. Always appreciate our friendship.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I don't know if I'm going to Scuffle this year, but if we do, we'll do our January 1st. Me and Cliff had this tradition for several years in a row where January 1st before the Scuffle, we put our shoes on and roll around. So.
Yeah. But you beat me up.
Stop. Okay. Well, that's gonna do it. Cliff, thanks so much, man. Best of luck with the Elite 8 this weekend.
Yes, sir.
Have a great day. Cliff Fretwell, everyone. And what'd you think, Kyle? Good show.
Guy's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, what a trendsetter and a guy that is really on the front end. I love what he had to say about Stephanie Fretwell, his wife. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, ride or die. That's going to do it for today's show. Like I said, Elite 8 Duels this weekend on Flow. And tomorrow on the show, we're going to have Ja'Cory Teemer. Wednesday, the world champion, Amit Alor, the youngest world champion in U.S. history. So, fun week. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.